So as the title on the screen says, today is a webinar all about registered automotive workshops. So we have quite a bit to get through today, and we've got quite a number of our team on board. So I'll just do a brief intro and run through what we're going to talk about today. So first up, I will pass to Amanda Mozarek, who's the Acting Assistant Secretary of the Vehicle Safety Operations Branch, to do a bit of an introduction. And then we will be running through model reports. So Ross Hamilton, one of our colleagues, will be running through the role of a model report. Ubesh Shamdasani from the technical assessment team will talk about how we use model reports to modify vehicles. We also have Drew Ward, who's the director of the compliance and enforcement team. He will give us a bit of an update on recent outcomes of compliance and enforcement investigations. Ross will then finish off with a recap of the department's expectations of registered automotive approval approval holders. And as I said, we will have some time for questions at the end. So with thanks in advance to all the work and effort that's gone into this and to the team, I will now hand over to Amanda Mozarek. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you, Graham. So as a lot of you would be aware, over the past several months, we've conducted numerous compliance and enforcement activities. These have been done in line with the priorities that we've got published in our 2023 to 2026 strategy. And one of the focus areas has been RAWs. So during these compliance and enforcement activities undertaken by various RVS officers, it's become apparent that there's some knowledge gaps of what people should be doing. So if you're operating as a RAW, we're hopeful that this webinar will help you to better understand what you need to do to comply with your regulatory obligations. And it will also ensure that the vehicles you're manufacturing or modifying are safe to be driven on our roads. So I hope you find today informative, and if you've got questions at the end, we're very happy to take these and assist as much as we can. So I'm just going to pass over to Ross now.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Model reports are primarily used for vehicles on the Specialist and Enthusiast Register, as well as used 2- and 3-wheel vehicles that are not on the Specialist Enthusiast Vehicle Register. They provide a standardised approach for modifying these vehicles to comply with the Australian design rules and other applicable standards. Registered automotive workshops manufacture or modify vehicles according to approved model reports. Authorised vehicle verifiers check that the modifications performed by the registered automotive workshop align with the work instructions in the model report. Together, they ensure vehicles are modified and verified according to approved standards, maintaining consistency and compliance in the vehicle modification process. They ensure vehicles being provided through the concessional pathway are safe to be driven on Australian roads. I'll pass over to Umesh now.
Thanks, Ross. So model reports must be approved and enforced to be used to modify the vehicle. The approved status of a model report approval can be checked in Rover. When you go to Rover and look at the list of approved model reports, you can see that the approval status is listed in the 4th column. We understand that many RAWs rely on the model report approval holder to provide them with an approved and enforced report. However, our compliance and enforcement team has identified instances where approved and enforced model reports have been amended by the author without the department's knowledge or approval. In addition to the model report approval holder, this can expose the RAW using the report to regulatory action by the department. So it is important that you go to Rover and check that the approval is there and in force. Model reports scope and approval instructions must cover the exact model and date range of the vehicle presented to a RAW for modification. If the vehicle does not match the scope or work instruction from a model report, the vehicle must not be modified by the RAW. The vehicle or componentry should match the documentation in the model report. If not, contact the author. It will prompt the model report approval holder to seek a variation to that model report approval, which will ensure that the model report is updated with the latest accurate information. It is important that model report approval work instructions are not ignored, and a RAW should not refer or present a road vehicle to an authorized vehicle verifier if it does not comply with the work instructions set out in the report. If we have any concerns or issues when using the model report to modify a vehicle, we encourage you to reach out to the author to confirm in writing that the model report is suitable for the vehicle you are modifying. And if you continue to have any concerns, you can contact the department. Now I will hand over to Drew Ward, who is Head of Compliance and Enforcement Area.
Thanks, Amish, and hi, everyone. So look, before I get into it, I'd just like to mention, as Amanda did mention earlier, that RAWs play an absolutely critical role in ensuring relevant vehicles are modified or manufactured in accordance with all necessary requirements. And if this does not occur appropriately, it can put the Australian motoring public at risk. So the department's compliance and enforcement section have recently conducted several compliance monitoring inspections at various RAWs across Australia. And our inspectors have really concentrated on how RAWs are adhering to the conditions of their individual RAW approval. And also, if the RAW is a concessional RAV entry approval holder, how they are making ROVA applications to the department and ensuring their applications are accurate and that the information provided is not misleading. So if our inspectors discover RAWs are not operating their approvals in accordance with the conditions of the approval or the regulatory requirements under the RVS legislation, depending on the circumstances of the non-compliance, a range of compliance and enforcement actions and tools can be accessed to achieve compliance. And these can be at the lowest level of intervention, providing education to help a RAW immediately and simply correct the non-compliance issue, accepting voluntary enforceable undertakings from the RAW concerned, and for the most serious of non-compliance issues, issuing substantial infringement notices, which are monetary fines, seeking court-issued civil penalty orders, and lastly, also seeking prosecution via the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions, also known as the CDPP. That would occur for the very most serious of non-compliance matters. So, in the following slides, there's some examples of non-compliance that our inspectors have found when they've undertaken compliance monitoring inspections in the field or engaged with RAWs remotely. It is important to note that all of these vehicles were on the RAV at the time of the inspection activity and therefore have been firstly inspected and modified by a RAW in accordance with an approved model report, and then also verified by an AVV. Please also note that the non-compliances that were identified were very easily found by simple visual observation of the relevant vehicle, and no vehicle disassembly was required. So in this slide, you can quickly see that for this particular vehicle, it is fitted with a foreign language warning label, likely for the airbag, and the warning label is not in compliance with national road vehicle standards, as it is not in the language of the country where the vehicle is to be registered, Australia. So for those that are interested, you can look up ADR 73 clause 6.23 for the specific requirement. So for this next vehicle, which has been modified by a RAW, verified by an AVV and added to the RAV, there is a note on the dash alerting the reader that not all CRAs are fitted. It is important to note that all the CRAs should have been fitted by the RAW at the time of the vehicle modification in accordance with the model report, and the vehicle not presented to an AVV for verification without them. And additionally, the AVV should not have verified the vehicle and added it to the RAV. So definitely a few issues here. I think this image speaks for itself. Vehicle identification markings must be in accordance with the approved model report and National Road Vehicle Standards. This image shows a vehicle with a rear wheelchair ramp. As many attending today would already be aware, there is an ongoing issue with some vehicles in the Australian fleet having a rear wheelchair ramp, which was not the specified mobility feature in the relevant approved model report. RAWs are reminded that a vehicle must match the scope of the department approved model report. If something does not seem right with the information in a model report, contact the model report author for clarification. And if you still feel something does not seem right, please contact the department to discuss further. Again, another image that speaks for itself. Remember, this vehicle is on the RAV and has been allegedly inspected and modified by a RAW. So as can be seen here, the windscreen is clearly cracked, which is a defect. This vehicle was also on the RAV at the time of our inspection activity. This particular image closes out some of the examples of vehicle non-compliance that our inspectors have found while undertaking compliance monitoring inspections in the field. However, in addition, the team has also discovered instances where RAWs have not modified vehicles at all, imported vehicles under a concessional RAV entry approval, but the vehicles are indeed not fit for Australian roads, modified vehicles where the vehicles are on the RAV, but the vehicles have aftermarket roll cages in them and other non-standard performance parts. So on this slide, when we undertake our inspection activities, we've also found other issues not necessarily related directly to vehicle compliance and the National Road Vehicle Standards, but issues with the maintenance of raw approvals. So at times, inspectors have been unable to physically locate the raw workshop as the street address provided to the department and detailed in ROVA is not correct or has not been updated. So as a friendly reminder, you may like to check ROVA and update your contact details if required. Also, when attempting to enter the premises of some RAWs with their consent, our inspectors have been advised that the raw approval and relevant key personnel, the raw approval holder and relevant key personnel were unavailable to provide consent, yet the workshop appeared to be clearly operating. So it's really important for all RAWs to note that your regulatory approval and the way you operate under it may be monitored for compliance by the department from time to time. As you can appreciate, monitoring compliance of a regulatory approval is considered normal and is expected. If the department cannot monitor your compliance with a provision of the Act, in this case the Road Vehicle Standards Act 2018, with your consent, it may result in the department seeking a monitoring warrant from a court. These types of warrants will allow compliance monitoring by inspectors during the period the warrant is in force. Practically, this means inspectors could enter your raw premise under a monitoring warrant from time to time to monitor your compliance, and the period a monitoring warrant could be in force can be up to 3 months. So multiple compliance monitoring during that period could occur at the department's discretion. So please note, if you choose not to consent to our inspectors entering your premises, which I must say is your right, please also consider, importantly, that the alternative monitoring warrant action is also available to the department. Some of the observations made during our inspections is a particular raw approval appeared to be unable, raw approval holder, appeared to be unable to follow the procedures detailed within the model report, and some raw approval holders have been selecting documents out of different model reports. For example, a consumer information notice, SIN, for a particular vehicle, and used incompletely an unrelated vehicle. In addition, further, all rawers have indicated they have a quality management system when they originally made their application to the department for a raw approval. However, when raws have been inspected, the quality management system is either not in use or is not understood by some rawers. Please note, raw approvals can be suspended or revoked if the relevant department delegate considers that the quality management system is not being used by a raw. As having one that is effective is a legislative criterion for the department deciding to grant an application for a raw approval. For those that are interested, you can reference sections 58B of the Road Vehicle Standard Rules 2019 for that particular important criterion. So food for thought, how are you operating your QMS, if at all? And if you are not, I would suggest you consider operating your raw under your quality management system moving forward. So for this slide, in addition to undertaking compliance monitoring inspections out in the field, where we visit premises, our inspectors and officers also undertake desktop information reviews, where we request specific information from a raw when we reasonably believe that raw should have the information under the legislation. This information could be records of the vehicles that have been modified and the general operations of the raw approval holder. Some examples of what we have found through these desktop review processes include raws refusing to provide the requested information, even though the request was made formally and under a condition of the raw approval. In refusing to provide information, the raw is exposing itself to a possible breach of the RVS legislation, which could result in an escalated enforcement action. When an alleged non-compliant vehicle has been reported to the department, inspectors have sought information about the relevant vehicle, which includes photographs, and in many instances, the raw is unable to provide this information. Also, when requesting photographic information from some raw approval holders, the photos provided are identical when compared to other photos as provided by the AVV, for example. This indicates that legislative obligations regarding appropriate record keeping may not have been met. So look, to wrap up, you've seen that our inspectors and compliance officers are observing a range of general compliance issues in the raws industry that vary in their level of severity. Noting these observations, we will continue to be out and about conducting compliance monitoring inspections and also requesting information under the conditions of raw approvals. It is very important for all raws to know, very important, that the RVS legislation is now being fully in place for over a year and also after an extensive, highly consultative transitional period. So as we move forward, we will only be educating for the most minor cases of identified non-compliance. If we can continue to see non-compliance of the type mentioned in the previous slides, we will move to enforce industry compliance appropriately via infringement notices, potential court orders, and also seeking prosecution where applicable for the most serious of matters. Okay, that's it from me, and I'll hand it over to you, Ross.
Thank you, Drew. So, obligations. Part of the concessional RAV entry pathway, RAWs play an important role of modifying vehicles to meet ADRs and other standards before being provided to Australian consumers. That is why RAWs are regulated, due to the important part they play in keeping people safe on Australian roads. So here's a recap of what approval holders need to do in that effort and to meet their regulatory requirements. If you're a RAW, ensure that you have access to and are using the current version of the approved model report work instructions for the vehicle. Check the vehicle relates to the concessional RAV entry approval. Check it's the right vehicle. Check the vehicle to be modified is the same vehicle that applies to the approved model report. Ensure your RAW approval covers the type of vehicle to be modified, or if not, request a variation to your RAW approval to meet the additional vehicle categories or span of operation. Notify the department if there is a suspicion of non-compliance or fraud in relation to the road vehicle. Notify the department and discontinue work on the vehicle if there is any damage or corrosion or repair of damage or corrosion that exceeds the limit thresholds detailed in the Road Vehicle Standards Limit of Acceptable Damage or Corrosion Determination 2021. Retain all records relating to operations conducted under your RAW approval for 7 years from the date a record was made. This includes the signed declaration and documentation that we'll discuss shortly. Retain and maintain procedures that you have such equipment and trained personnel as is necessary to perform manufacture or modification work in accordance with the approved model report. Ensure that all procedures are kept up to date and are made readily available to appropriate trained personnel. And notify the department of any changes to key management personnel or significant changes in your control under the RAW approval as soon as possible. All steps and checks must be followed in accordance with approved model report work instructions before signing the RAW declaration and presenting all of these things: the vehicle, the signed declaration, which must be in the approved form, and supporting material referenced in that approved form, which includes either evidence the model report approval holder and RAW are the same entity, or a written statement from the holder of the model report approval authorising the RAW to use the model report. And you've got to provide each of those things to an authorised vehicle verifier for vehicle verification.